linked to the fact that the land structure is different in these places. Okay, so unless one takes into account land structure, one cannot talk of incomes. Now, talking of land structure, I think there have been two formulations, in fact, about farmers' income, and I think both are problematic. One is this thing about doubling farmers' income, and as I showed you, the moment you think of disparities, it becomes a problem. There is also another formulation which has the same problem, which is that MSP in India should be set at a level that is cost plus 50%. Okay, now the moment you say cost plus 50%, you are saying cost plus 50% for moong and cost plus 50% for sugarcane. Okay, now that's a completely different ballgame. Cost plus 50% for moong would still mean very low income for a moong farmer, and cost plus 50% for sugarcane would be an impossible target to meet. Okay, so I think one has to rethink these formulations, and in my view, one has to somewhere peg it to a decent level of income. You have to say that per unit of land, per acre of land or per hectare of land, any crop should give a return of this much per month, or per month of population, or so on. You have to have an absolute minimum return that any farmer must get from producing whatever crop that the farmer produces. No crop should give return lower than that. One has to set a floor on the amount of return that one must get from agriculture, and that should be used then to deal with remunerativeness in a relative sense, so that the crops that need more support get more support, crops that need less support get less support, farmers that need more support get more support, and so on and so forth. The second problem, the second and the third element are, in my story, are the cost and the value of output. And here again, I think there is a problem. I think a lot of people, well-meaning people, progressive people, who've been talking about agrarian crisis, who've been talking about problems of farmers, very often talk about raising MSP to a level. And very often the level that's being talked about is C2 plus 50%. Now, I think that's a problem. Given the level that you have of costs today, which is a result of 30 years of liberalization of input markets, which is a result of decontrolling the prices of fertilizer, which is a result of huge increase in energy prices, which is a result of privatization of provisioning of seeds, which is a result of basically making farmers dependent on open uncontrolled input factor pricing in the markets. Saying that 50% on that cost is basically then not taking into account the fact that this can become hugely inflationary. Okay, so I think there is also, when one says that farmers' incomes need to be raised, it cannot be merely on the basis of raising MSP, but has to, before that, raise the question, why are the costs so high? Why are the farmers incurring so much to produce? Okay, and I think that really brings us to the most important questions. Look at each of the major inputs, the one that's where the story is clearest is a fertilizer. Okay? India has had a problem that Indian farmers, because of higher subsidy on urea, have historically overused urea. Okay? What do? We decontrol the prices of all fertilizers other than urea. Okay? In name of what's called the nutrient-based subsidy, you have decontrolled the prices of DAP, superphosphate, and so on, which has meant that the prices of everything other than urea has shot through the roof. Which means that farmers can only afford urea, which has meant that farmers are using even more of urea than they were using before, thanks to liberalization of fertilizer prices. Now, it has meant that the fertilizer prices, the amount of expenditure a farmer needs to incur on fertilizer has gone up. what does the present government do to deal with excess use of urea and, well, to deal with excess use of urea? Two things. One is, they say, let's start neem coating urea. Let's start coating urea with neem oil. So the entire urea production of the country is supposedly being coated by neem. I don't know where so much neem oil is coming from. I do know that all sorts of industrial oils have been used to coat urea, which means that you have engine oils going into your soil. And why coat urea? Because there's some sort of Gomutra kind research about how neem slows down the rate at which urea dissolves in soil. So although you will put so much urea, it will take more time to dissolve. But you would still put so much urea. Now, what do you do to make people use less urea? You basically decide, like you thought when you did Mumbai, that farmers are idiots. Okay, so farmers think that they will use 3 bags of urea per acre of land. Let's reduce the size of bag, and they won't go. So instead of 50 kg bags as we've always had, let's have 45 kg bags. So they start using 5 kg bags. Now that's the kind of solutions you have to reduce cost, and obviously they don't work. Like my noteworthy reference. So
You mean farmers are not idiots?
Well, obviously they are not idiots. Somebody is an idiot. You decontrol fertilizer prices. Fertilizer prices go through the roof. They obviously start using a lot more urea, and the only solution you can come up with is reduce the size of the bag. Okay. Take the case of energy costs. Okay. Last 3 years were years in which fuel prices were low. But then that was the only instrument Mr. Jaitley had to mop up money, and therefore they keep excise duty levels so high, which means that farmers have been spending a hell of a lot of money buying diesel for their pumps. Okay. Now the point is that when you are talking about raising farmers' incomes, I think one needs to first look at costs and see why farmers are having to spend so much in producing the crops that they do, and what you need to do to bring down the cost of production. And I think that is an extremely important aspect of the problem, which unfortunately is often missed. And I think when one talks about raising farmers' income, as much as one refers to the problem of prices, one needs to look at problem of high costs. Now coming to the prices, I think there are 2 problems. One is clearly post from UPA 1 period to UPA 2 period, and from UPA 2 period to the current government's period, there has been a progressive deceleration in the rate of increase of MSP. It has particularly slowed down after the current government came to power, and that's a problem. That said, there is also there is essentially 3 problems with prices. One, the global. So one is deceleration of MSPs. 2 is that the global prices have been low. But 3 is that the prices have actually gone topsy-turvy and post demonetization. In last one and a half year has seen prices going up and down like nobody's business. First, demonetization resulted in a situation where farmers were unable to dispose of the Kharif 2016 crop, then resulted in a situation where farmers were unable to invest in the Rabi 2017 crops, resulting in prices shooting up for some of these particularly perishable crops, and now again a problem where crops like potato are seeing a collapse of prices. So you've had prices going up and down, in particular for a whole range of crops, prices going down. The 4th problem, there is a 4th problem, is also that you actually also have a situation where farmers are exposed to vagaries of the market with having nothing to turn to when they have a problem. Okay? So you have, for example, the problem of chili prices. East Asia, China are big markets for chili from Andhra and Karnataka. Okay? Last 2 years, the demand has fallen because China has had a China had excellent production of chili. Where do farmers go? They have nowhere to go, and suddenly you have a situation where you invested in chili, and these are crops in which cost of production is very high. You invest hell of a lot in producing crops of this kind, and you suddenly find you can't sell it. I mean, 3 days ago, potato was selling for 10 rupees for 50 kilos of potato. You have situations where farmers cannot recover even the cost of transporting the crop to the market or picking the crop from the fields. So, there has been this problem that having exposed farmers to vagaries of a liberalized market, you have provided them no avenues to turn to. There is no state to procure your produce, there is no insurance that works for you. Insurance essentially works in India for banks. Historically, agricultural insurance has been designed only to ensure that banks can recover the loans, and farmers have never got any benefits from the agricultural insurance. Now even more so after this government came, because they have now opened it up to private insurance companies, which has meant that private insurance companies can actually mop up a lot in terms of premium payments from the government, and not having to pay any claims at all. So there is a huge problem, coming back to the points that I said, that farmers today have no avenue to turn to when they face the problem because of liberalized markets. So I think these are the problems that I can wrap up. Just to sum up, I think the problem of incomes first and foremost has to be seen in terms of these three constituents. The fact that there is so much pressure on land, that there's such a large proportion of our population that's dependent on agriculture with little means of productive, remunerative employment outside agriculture, which means that land holdings are small. There is a large proportion of our workforce that's dependent on agriculture, and therefore per worker incomes are low, per household incomes are low. The second being the problem of high costs, particularly in the post-liberalization period, high and rising costs. And finally, the problem of agricultural sector. So I think one has to look at all these three things in the hopes that something can be done to make farmers' incomes better.
We have our third and now very familiar speaker.
Okay, I think we've got a number of things which earlier speakers have made clear, and let me just summarize two of the most important points which have been made, I think. The first is the one that Mohan made right at the beginning, which is that at first sight the whole thing is undoable. I mean, 15% growth doesn't happen. Having said that, I think, like everything, and I think that's a sensible attitude, you don't say we'll achieve X number, but we'll do our best. I mean, that's where it goes down to. But doing our best doesn't quite match, goal chasing. So the goals themselves keep getting redefined every now and then. Now, 2 or 3 types of redefinition have taken place. The first is that now it is clear in government documents that when you talk about doubling of farmers' incomes in 2022, that is over and above the income in 2015. Okay, rather than 2000. So it's not in 5 years, it's in 7 years. So essentially you reduce the rate of growth to 10% rather than 15%, okay? That's number one. So the official papers from the Niti Aayog or the Ministry of Agriculture are now fairly clear that the base is 2015, which is the second of the two consecutive drought years. In other words, the lowest point reached by agriculture. So that's a clever thing to do, is fine. Nothing problematic. Even if you can do it, but it still means a 10% rate of growth per annum on top of that. The second thing is something that, in this same context, is what Satyasai referred to. Satyasai wasn't entirely correct in saying that farm incomes have never been measured. In fact, the 12th plan not only made it the objective we had actually said should move from the production of tonnage to the creation of incomes. This was the fundamental difference between the 12th plan and the others. And this government came a lot after the 12th plan. Okay, so it's, the idea could have come from what Vikas said, it happened in the UN, or it could have simply come from the 12th plan. So I mean, the point is, now when you start looking at farmers' incomes, it is true, again as Satyasai pointed out, that the only piece of statistics which looks only at farmers' income are the situation assessment survey of farmers, the first of which was in 2003 and the second of which was in 2012. And this situation assessment of farmers is in fact what is now again being used as the base. So what you're doing is, you're taking the 12-13 situation assessment and then changing that base to the 2015 overall numbers, and you're saying, okay, doubling from these numbers is what the goal is. Now there are some interesting problems with these situation assessment surveys. The most important of these is that the situation assessment survey, both periods, they're not entirely comparable, but both of them measure a much lower agricultural income than the national accounts do. You can calculate agricultural incomes from the national accounts, and the national accounts does it, gives you rural income calculations at least once in 10 years. And those are comparable. And the situation assessment survey is coming out with essentially much lower agricultural incomes for the following reason. It measures only about 60% of the land. That is, we know how much land there exists in the country from the cadastral surveys, from land use surveys, and the situation assessment is based on a reading which is managing to capture only about 60% of the land. Now obviously, there's a gap of 40%. Now if you switch, and if you can use numbers with alacrity that many of our number crunchers can do, us to do, I also do it, I could compare a number in the base from the situation assessment survey and in the final from the national account survey. If I do the two, then obviously I'll get W almost immediately. Because you then account for that missing land. Okay, so if somebody does it, so they should be told, just as Satyasai said, that if it is nominal incomes, then it's very easy to do, it's happened in the past. Similarly, if you compare apples with pears, or with apples with half apples, then again it can be done almost automatically. Okay, so these things might well happen. But my main point is that this picture about doubling per capita incomes in agriculture, is possibly more doable than all my previous speakers However, that still remains the point number 2, which Vikas brought out, which is inequality. And that is, can you or should you attempt at the same time to double the income of the rich farmer as the poor farmer? Because if you do that, certain things might, you might be doing, I mean, it's basically an inequality problem. But it's not just an inequality problem, it might also be a problem where you end up spending more resources. For example, if you spend huge amounts of resources more in highly irrigated land, you could have with much less resources been able to get better returns where the land itself is at the moment yielding much lower than potential. So there are efficiency and inequality issues, but the inequality issues predominate. But let me tell you why I think that leaving aside the inequality matter, which is important, it's extremely important, and I'll come back to it later, why it may well be the case that we should actually think, if not doubling, but pretty close to doubling per capita incomes of farmers. Why? And I'll give you just 7 years period, 2004 to 2011. The reason I'm choosing these periods is these are 2 years for which the National Sample Survey has full data. Okay, we have got employment data, we've got consumption data, and pretty close together, we've got the Farmers Assessment Survey data. I mean, just separated by about 2 years. And you've got national account statistics during this period, so that you can actually compare the national accounts. This period also happens to be the period, one of the fastest periods of Indian GDP growth. Indian GDP growth averaged, from the GDP side, about 7.5% per capita, which is almost 9% per annum in total overall GDP growth. A little less than 9%, but roughly there. And take away population growth, that's around 1.5%, it was about 7.5% population growth. Note, to double farm incomes, you need 7% growth of incomes. Now, during this 7-year period, you had the following situation as well. Something pretty much unique to India's GDP history. But just open your national accounts books, check it out. For heaven's sake, check out every statement that I'm making. This 2004 to 2011 period, the share of agriculture in national income remained almost constant in current price terms, not in constant price terms. In current price terms, was almost constant over this period. What does that mean? What that means is that current price agricultural incomes were growing at the same rate as the overall income growth in India. What does that mean? If agricultural population was growing at the same rate as the population growth of India, it means that agricultural incomes were also growing at about 7.5% per annum, per capita incomes. But we know something else. We know that this is a period during which the number of agricultural workers, for the first time in India's history, fell by 30 million, declining in absolute numbers by about 30 million. So agricultural population, at least agricultural workers, were growing far slower than the population of India. Now, can't we do that again? I mean, why do we throw up our hands? Because all these numbers say we've achieved 7.5%. We have certainly achieved more than that because agricultural population went down, the agricultural workforce went down, and we need to grow at 7% to double incomes. We need to actually 7.5%, we need to do it a little bit 2% more, and we can actually do it over a 7-year period, or if we can't do it over a 7-year period, we can do it at least over a 10-year. So I would put it in those days. The distance is not that great. Now, what happened during this period? And what is it that has given way from that situation to the present? Well, a number of things happened. The first is something over which we had no control, and the present government has no control either. And that was world prices of agricultural commodities were zooming up in that period 2004 to 2011. When world prices are zooming up, domestic prices also zoom up, and that created a situation where terms of trade were moving in favor of agriculture, and agriculture were getting better prices. And was happening because the world prices were moving up. And it's been somewhat opposite in the last 3 or 4 years because world prices have been slowing and slowing down. No government can do too much about it, but governments get their blame. In this context, of course, what happened is that government was blamed for high food inflation, whereas this government is taking credit for low food inflation. But when it comes to the farmers' benefits, the two things are, of course, working in exactly the opposite manner. So that's number one. But what it tells you is a thing which both Vikas as well as Satyasai, I think, pointed out, which is prices are very important in this game. The second thing that happened then is we managed to actually get a rate of growth of around 4% per annum in the agricultural output rate of growth, which is either the GDP rate of growth or any index of agricultural value of output. How did we get that? Well, mainly because, and this 4% was in some sense, again, it's not unique, it happened before, but the 4% growth target had been the growth target of the 9th plan, 10th plan, 11th plan, 12th plan, and we could actually meet it only in this 7-year period. How did it happen? Well, I think it happened for many reasons, but one of the reasons was that I think for the first time we were saying actually to ourselves, let's follow up this thing which Satyasai referred to, which is two things, yield gaps and diversification, and let's actually do it in a proper manner. In other words, you have to actually get some sort of local level planning going, and I'll not give you the details, you can ask me later. We did get it. So we did get some output growth, more than in the past, simply on the output side. And let me tell Vikas, yield gap improvements are actually cost reducing. They are hugely cost reducing. So costs were being reduced simply because the yield per output is going up, and this was happening essentially in rainfed areas. It was not so much in the irrigated area, so it's the poorer farmers who are taking. But there is a gap between this 4% and about that 8%, 7.5 plus the decline. Where did that come from? That wasn't coming from your technology or yield gaps and things. It was largely coming from a combination of prices and diversification. Now, I think what has happened is that on the yield gap side, because of the 2 drought years, you have lost the momentum. I'm absolutely sure that on the field, our incentives to agricultural officers is much weaker. And in our laboratories, more than 2/3 of our ICAR institutes remain headless. And if you have a situation like that, then on the output, on these things, you're not going to do very well. And I think the whole thing has become driven more by MSP and things rather than the harder work of actually working at the ground level, output producing things. But that's part of the story. So between 4% and that 8%, some of it is technology, a lot of it is price, but there is something, and some of it is what I mentioned, which is increasing the value of, or either reducing the number of workers or increasing non-agricultural incomes of farmhouses. In fact, that's a substantial part of the incomes in the 59th of the 70th rounds. On top of that, there are, because of diversification, there are significant changes also taking place in the composition of farm incomes. Livestock part of incomes is growing. It's a bit more than 20% of total incomes of farmers at the moment. Include that the incomes inclusive of non-agriculture. 20% of that is livestock income. The livestock income has actually suffered a loss in this 3 years for a number of reasons, including the misplaced Goraksha. The misplaced Goraksha has actually hurt the incomes of people who look after cows and the entire cattle economy. Can these things be brought back? Why not? If we actually simply move from just sloganeering on the one hand to essentially saying, look, it has been done before, it can be done again, maybe we can't do it in 7, maybe we can do it in 10 years, it can be done. It's been done and there was nothing great. It was nothing great in terms of iconic technological things. It wasn't a green revolution. It wasn't even your cotton BT revolution. Cotton BT revolution started in about 2002 and fizzled out by about 2007. The period I'm talking about is a period where it is the about 1 or 2% growth being turned out by our laboratories every year. Nobody quite notices that. That yield growth is happening every year, tying it on to yields, and third, harnessing the fact that the rest of the economy does well, agriculture will also do well because of higher prices as well as more jobs into which agriculturists can get into. So either bringing them more incomes or relieving them of workers. And the more you think about it, if we can get this economy to move towards becoming more urban, then again, subject to the condition of inequality which Vikas had brought up, we can do it. Because take a farmer on the outskirts of Bombay or Delhi, with a very little bit of land, he can be 3, 4, 5 times as rich as a guy with much larger pieces of land in the hinterland. Why? Because he grows fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables, for a rich city, and that entire market exists. So, think of what we were supposed to think in the previous one of the landscape.
Thank you, Abhijit, and thank you to all our panel speakers. You'll agree with me that we now have a very full plate even after the speakers have spoken, because we, I think, are left with quite diverse, if not conflicting, positions on this rubric of doubling of incomes or farm incomes in the space of 5 years, 7 years, that itself is part of the debate. And I think, if I'm not misreading the picture that has emerged in the last hour or so, that the rubric of doubling of incomes itself is a very useful rubric, as you've seen, because it's been able to bring out a number of issues, both pessimistic and optimistic concerns about the near-term future of the farm sector, by which I mean the next 5 to 10 years. So the rubric is a useful one, but I also draw your attention to the confusion that evidently is involved in how you apply the rubric. Is it really 5 years or is it 7 years? One. Is it this base or that base here in the reckoning? A very poor, drought-year-like situation gives you ample momentum starting from there, as opposed to a more normal year. We've also seen that the world price regime has an immense impact on the perceived or measured performance of agriculture and income growth. And that price regime isn't quite the same thing as the productivity yield regime. We are often much more concerned about the latter for good reason, because the world price regime is a fair weather friend. You know, it's here now and it's gone tomorrow and so on. So that's why I found it rather perplexing that the 7% number kept coming up in Abhijit's talk very frequently, that I brightly sailed out by talking about the 15% per annum growth rate. That's an enormous difference right there. Exactly what are we talking about? Okay, so I lay before you this, this two-sided intro to this last part of our deliberations, which is that there is an interpretive dilemma, but of course there is also a prescriptive question that we are addressing here. The interpretation issue is also important, so please bear that in mind. Now, what I'm aiming to do is, if there is enough enthusiasm from the floor, to go on for another 15 minutes, which will take us to the end of the hour. Okay? So please raise questions from the floor, and format-wise, what I have in mind is to take 5 questions at a time from the floor. Ideally, the questioner should pose a question, unless they are very keen to interject a comment, that's also fine. But make your question or interjection very precise and short, and please try to identify a person to whom it is addressed. If you don't have a person, and if it is not addressed to anybody, take the risk that nobody will answer the question. Okay? So let's proceed. Is there somebody who might coordinate, or shall I just raise all people? Yeah, okay, fine. Please proceed. Just raise your hand and we will call on you. Thank you.
I think after 4 extremely erudite presentation, I am still venturing to change the wavelength. There has been almost of the studies have shown, women studies scholars have also shown, there's a feminization of agriculture and the kind of subsistence work which we do that doesn't come into cash nexus. So it is a collection of fuel, fodder, water, animal care, kitchen gardening. That is one very important, and making cow and cake for energy. And when you talk about the proletarianization of agriculture, I think large proportion of them happen to be women in the workforce, agrarian workforce. And you brought the question of, Chairperson, you brought the question of caste system, which is the homo hierarchicus, but I think this is another gender and patriarchy that is also. All of them happen to be in the informal sector, and we have enough reports about informal sector. Among the asset-less agriculturists, you have many pockets where you have starvation rates and malnutrition, and among the asset-owning farmers, farmers suicide, who after farmers committing suicide, their widows have to manage this thing. In this context, what kind of social security and social protection that you would recommend? My question is to all 4 of you, and I request all 4 of you to answer. Second one is that entry into corporate world. We see just 50 kilometers from Bombay, you go and the farmers, they are the price makers. For bhindi, they would pay 2 rupees per kg. I saw in Latur and Aurangabad last May, they were ready to pay only 10 paise per kg for tomatoes. Can you imagine farmers? They said you will throw it. We have seen in Surat how the farmers came and just threw everything, all agrarian products and milk. And my last question is about the global economy, IPR regimes, and when the developing industrialized countries are protecting their farmers, how can they pressurize? What right do they have to pressurize developing countries to not to give any supportive protection to their farmers? And more than 480 products, agrarian products, are at the vagaries of the international market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jaya?
A very brief comment and a very brief question. One is, I think, in the current dispensation, this government has also its avatar 10 years ago, so to speak. I think one must not underestimate the exacerbation of a structural crisis that they initiate by sheer incompetence and stupidity. And I think that this brings a short-term suffering of an incredible kind. And it's just demonetization was one, Goraksha, that whole tamasha is another. And we will not underestimate that. The danger is it takes away from the issues that we should actually be discussing. And in terms of which speakers, I think, all the speakers, I think, have drawn attention to. So I just want to underline this, something for myself to articulate. That's what. The question is, I was very struck by Abhijit's remark that, yield increase is cost reducing. How does that work? And you sort of said it in a very general sense. How does it work? I think you.
Thank you, Professor Rawal.
My question is from Dr. Abhijit Sen. In 2004, the government announced doubling of agricultural credit and till 2007, and more or less they were able to do that. So what role did that play in that period 2004 to 2011 that you talked about?
Next question, comment, please. Mic person.
My question is addressed to Dr. Satyasai. In your speech, and as a matter of fact, all the speakers have addressed this, about the problems faced by small and tiny farmers. Now, for example, small and tiny farmers have certain constraints. For example, even increasing public expenditure on irrigation. For example, during the COSI project that we saw, that only farmers with area over 0.8 hectares are able to actually exploit the benefits of increased irrigation and proper irrigation channels. So what specialized instruments can be used to help small and tiny farmers actually be able to double their income in the current times?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Aditya, sir. Yeah, over here.
Sir, anybody can answer the question which I am asking. Agriculture, or rather I should say land, is a matter of state subject. When it comes to center and state relationship, I think most of the time the debate is like, state is putting the ball in terms of policy matter to the center, and center is again and again pondering on the state. So in this setup, how a kind of policy situation emerges as the debate on agriculture and doubling farmers' income we are looking up at this panel. So can somebody on that bring something up?
Thank you. Good question. Next.
question is to Dr. Mohan Rao. So there are two, yeah.
Guilty as charged.
Yes, yes.